Welcome to the Raising Cinephiles podcast, a show about passing on your love of cinema to the next generation. I'm your host, Jessica Kantor, and I have worked in all facets of the entertainment industry for the last 20 years, and recently became a mom. Always remember that myself and guests are speaking from personal experience and not giving parenting advice. Let's go ahead and dive into the episode. Hi, and welcome back to the Raising Cinephiles podcast. This is your host, Jessica Kantor, and this week we are here with veteran producer Axel Kuschevatzky, most recently with Argentina in 1985, which was nominated for an Oscar and such an important film. And I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Jessica. I'm really happy to be here.
Amazing. So my first question, what is your first movie memory?
Oh, well, I'm from Argentina. I grew up there. I lived there until 3 years ago. So I'm fairly new in LA. I wouldn't say I just landed, but almost. Was before COVID. I grew up watching all kind of movies. Both my parents were hardcore cinephiles. They were not into the business, but they love cinema. There's a huge culture in Argentina, film culture. And my father used to rent Super 8 millimeters, movies. And he used to screen a lot of Disney stuff when I was growing up. So I would say that my first experiences watching films were at home, not even on TV, with a projector. And then my grandmother used to take me to the movies a lot, every Thursday. And back then you have a lot of revival houses. So I saw a lot of all those all Disney films from the 30s and 40s when I was growing up. And those are some of my early memories. And also there was a huge theater. Well, at least it looked huge for me. Cinema when I was growing up, where they used to play Warner Bros. Cartoons from the 50s, like,
Uh-huh.
Bugs Bunny and, Daffy Duck. And I grew up watching all that thing. And those are my early
Oh,
memories of
that's, I mean,
becoming a movie freak,
yes,
mostly.
that sounds magical to watch projection of the early Disney cartoons, well, early Mickey Mouse, you know, they have just a different tone and
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And the character seems to be made of
uh-huh.
rubber, like kind of elastic, and that creates a completely
Yeah.
different mood. And most of those shorts are also so un-PC, they're not- which is like we have to sometimes you have
Yeah.
to be careful about exactly what you show it to your kids because you need kids to understand
Yeah.
things in context, which is actually the hardest thing when you're making your kids learn about cinema. Understanding context it's really tough.
Yeah. But I think about the sound, like for you, the sound of the projector is so magical. And like
Oh,
seeing the strip of light and above you.
and also, one of the reasons I want my son is 15,
Mhm.
he wants to be in movies, and my daughter, she's going to be 12 and do. One thing I tried to share with them since they were quite young was the magical quality of going to the movies, which is not exactly the same as
Mhm.
watching a film. You can watch a film
Mhm.
on your cell phone, and it's a and of course, I mean, it could be a good experience, but it's not
Yeah.
mythical. Going to the movies has something. It's like going to the
Yeah.
temple of cinema. It becomes kind of a religious
Yeah.
experience. Or at least for me. I don't know. There. No, I can understand. There's a lot of people who say I don't like movies, and for me it's like an
Yeah.
insult. How can you not love movies? It's like out of my mind. I can't.
Okay, so I want to go back into your childhood before we go into your kids, 'cause I have plenty of
Sure.
questions for you about both. So as you were getting older and you were finding your own taste.
I found out most of the movies that made me dream about being a filmmaker when I was between 10 and 14 years old. And most of those films are still my favorite movies. I saw a lot of Hitchcock when I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm from 1972, and when I was like 14, they re-released a lot of Alfred Hitchcock films in theaters. in something called a film series called The Essential Hitchcock. And among those films were Vertigo, The Man Who Knew Too Much, uh, The Trouble with Harry. I mean, I saw all those films in theaters, and I fell in love with them. Yes, yes. I as much as I have no problem with dubbing, but it's like I want the real thing. I want to listen to James Stewart. I want to listen to Grace Kelly. I mean, it's not like the acting is it's not complete if the actor is dubbed. I mean, I like dubbing. I mean, I think it's a dubbing. It's an interpretation of a text somehow. Yeah. Well, that happens to me with series. I can't watch Get Smart with the actual voices of the actors. I need to listen to the dubbing actors because I grew up with that specific sound. But features, no, I do prefer subtitles. But I saw those kids put films back in the 80s. I saw The Searchers, the Sean Ford film, which is maybe my favorite when I was like 12, by accident on the TV. I grew up watching a lot of horror films from England with, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, the movies they made for a studio called Hammer Films. I fell in love with Roger Corman as a producer, not director, when I was like 12. And funnily enough, we became friends. So that's a good thing. That's really well, because my parents were cinephiles, they taught me when I was a kid that there was someone making films, that there was a voice behind them. There's something else, when I was like 10, my father used to take both me and one of my brothers to the Argentinian Cinematheque when they were playing Buster Keaton films. So I saw a lot of silent cinema when I was growing up, which is weird. It's not only black and white, which is seems to be the final frontier for a lot of people, but it was also, silent films. And watching, of course, movies like, and also Harold Lloyd, Safety Last, or movies like, The General by Buster Keaton. I mean, I was like, "Man, that blew my, it was like, wow, there's someone." I realized early on that those guys were the guys behind the movies I was watching. And also, and for most kids, the first notion of an auteur, personal filmmaker, it's actually being exposed to Walt Disney. People don't realize that Disney was a true auteur, as the French. He was the mind and the heart behind every single film. So as an experience for an audience, those that specific name Disney was equal a specific experience. So that's when I realized there were filmmakers, people making films. Wow. I wouldn't say there's a single one, it's like asking me if I love one of my kids more than the other. But I do remember, no, but it's as a transformative experience. I can, I certainly I can say, well, I do remember watching, It's a Beautiful Life for first time and crying and saying, wow, this is a different experience. Or Reaching Ball, the Martin Scorsese film on the theater when it came out in, early 80s. That was also a transforming experience. Oh, you can do something with movies. You can make movies that are not exactly what I have seen before. Yeah, those films were, yeah, absolutely transformative. Well, I would say that my experience it's not the same as I assume anybody else on this podcast because I come from a third world country where there was a huge filmmaking tradition in the 50s and 60s and early 70s, but because of the economic crisis, by the moment I finished high school, there was there was almost no filmmaking at all in my country. There were only like 8 movies a year. So early on, I realized that A, the kind of movie filmmakers were making in my country, I didn't like at all. And B, uh, I didn't have the chance back then to become a filmmaker because I had to do something else. There was no feel for what I wanted to do. So I started. I studied advertisement. I became an copywriter, and frankly, I realized early on that I hated the whole thing. The ad wall, people's small sellers, nobody really caring about anything. I hate with all my guts. Uh, so for a while, I thought about becoming a TV reporter, uh, specializing on movies, and I did that for a while. And then I got hired by Argentina's biggest TV network to work on programming and acquisitions. Um, I was basically the guy buying movies for the network. And that was a great, great learning experience because I was buying movies for an audience. I was thinking about, will this movie perform? Will the audience connect with this film and understanding, you know, what the audiences were looking for and how to communicate those films. That was awesome. I love. Um, and then I started writing. I wrote a couple of sitcoms for the network while I was also doing programming and acquisitions. I was the head writer for the local adaptations of The Nanny and Married with Children, which is weird because Married with Children, I mean, our take on Married with Children has been on constant reruns for the last 20 years. It's kind of an evergreen sitcom, yeah. And one day, a director who is a close friend of mine came to me and he said, I think you could be a good producer. Let's work together. And we started working together on a project that was The Secret of the Rise that went into winning the Best Foreign Film Oscar. So my debut as a producer was an Oscar winning film. I'm a lucky bastard, I know. And that's how I became a producer. What was her name? Yes, of course, I met her. I have a great meeting with her at Sony when we were talking about uh, how we were going to adapt Married with Children. And we already did on a time on the nanny. And the nanny was a lot of was our version in Argentina. And she said something that was great. Do whatever you want. I mean, you already have a hit. And that was, I remember that conversation because at the end, you know, um, you need locals to understand local culture. And it's not something that you can do remotely. There's a lot of layers there. Yeah. Well, and also, because of mostly because of streamers, I think that the whole notion of US against the wall regarding content, it's gone forever. I mean, you have runaway hits, especially with series like, Money Heist or Pachin or Squid Game. And you can have something like huge international hit, uh, like Paris. And nobody cares about where those contents are coming from anymore. I mean, the big question now is, it is any good? That's the question. Know where it comes from. And that's a good thing because if you think of the U.S. population, actually, we Latinos are the biggest, movie goer community in this country. I mean, those are the numbers that you can find on the NPA annual, research. I mean, you can look at that, and it's interesting. One of the reasons why Hollywood is having a lot of, you know, Latino representation, it's not because they want things to be fair. It's because there's a big audience that it's buying out there. I mean, if you think, yeah, yeah, but but then it's hard to tell people that there is not such thing as a single Latino audience. As much as you don't have a Middle East audience, you have a lot of different communities, or Eastern Europe thing. It's like uh, someone from Korea has a completely different taste than someone from China or someone from India, and that applies to Latin America too. I mean, it's not. I mean, Mexico and I don't know, Uruguay, they're not the same. They have different tastes. They have some things that they like at the same time, but mostly they're different cultures with the same language. Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, and it's like and at the same time, even the same narrative piece could resonate in different ways because in different cultures there are some elements that had different weight in the equation. I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, we living here in this country, we take a lot of things for granted. And once you travel abroad, you find that it's not exactly like that. I used to work for a corporation. I was the head of film for um, Telefonica, which is the biggest Spanish telco. I was head of film production for Viacom for a while, also in Latin America. And there was a moment when I was reaching my midlife crisis. I was reaching 50, and I said, I've been working for for corporations. There are a lot of things I like about working here. I'm this kind of safety net, and getting my salary on time every single month. And there's a lot of great people there. But I didn't think that I want to capitalize on my own personal brand before I get too old. And I felt the train was leaving the station. Um, so it took me like a couple of years to understand what was the next step, which was setting up my own production company with my British partner Fingling, and with my one of my best friends, Cindy Cohen, which is also my production partner. So the three of us, we created Infinity Hill as a company, and we said, I mean, we're going to have someone in London. Cindy, it's mostly in Buenos Aires. I wouldn't go to Madrid because I already worked there before. I know how it works. I do think that we need someone in LA. So I went to my family and I said, "Hey guys, I'm thinking about this. Are you okay?" And they were like, I don't know. Let us know. They were not completely sure about moving, the four of us. Uh, but I did a trick. A friend of mine who has a big house here invited us for like a week. And I'm thinking, I'm actually, my friend has some mansion up Beverly Hills. So we went there and my family fell in love with the city, of course. I tricked them into thinking that living in LA was like living in Beverly Hills. It wasn't, of course. Well, kids, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Completely different educational system. I mean, the social codes are different. But they adjusted. I mean, in the meantime, we have COVID. I mean, no, I mean, we have the COVID pandemic, and that slowed down everything. That was about that was yeah. Yeah. And also there's a community that's the main reason I decided to come here was to understand how the thing worked. But I fell in love with the filmmaking communities here. That's and you can find. I mean, funny when you are in a different city and you talk about the business, people tend to connect business with what it's the economic. driving force in that specific city. So if you go to a town where there's a coal mine and you say business, everybody's thinking about mining. But here in LA, you say the business, and it's one single thing. It's the entertainment business, nothing else. And you can find people that it's like, I don't know, fourth or fifth generation in business. There's a lot of people to learn. But I do feel that finding your inner voice, your inner call, is one of the most relevant things for us humans. I mean, because that's the key for happiness. And somehow, I mean, it's not I am happy 24/7. Of course, this is a job where there's a lot of frustration and a lot of struggles, but at the same time, I wouldn't do anything else. This is the thing. Okay. I mean, I do remember taking my son, the first film he saw in a theater, not on TV, because nowadays with, multiple screens, I mean, you can't control kids as much as you would like to. But the first movie he saw in a theater was Toy Story 3. And he had a um, own Woody, like any kid. Like he took his own Woody to the movies. So he was watching the film while grabbing Woody. And when the movie ended, he stayed through the whole end crawl credit. And that's when I said, oh, the little guy fell for it. He, he stayed until the last, until he found out that no animal was hurt. Well, um, he's 15 now, but he was like 2.5 or 3 years old back then. Yeah. Yeah. With my daughter, I don't remember the first movie we took her. I think it was Frozen or something like that. It was clearly, I mean, we were looking for, as always, as parents, we were looking always for stuff that they could connect emotionally, and they could understand. Uh, it's like, you're always afraid of showing them something that they're not prepared to digest. You don't want to force them into watching something that it's not appropriate for them, right? Well, little story here. Year and a half ago, I decided to show my kids a movie that I think it's masterpiece from the 70s, Paper Moon. The film was directed by my second father, Peter Bogdanovich. He was one of my closest friends, and we have a really, really close relationship. Uh, I'm still grieving. He died last year. Yeah, and he made some of the greatest movies from the 70s. He made The Last Picture Show, What's Up Doc, Paper Moon. I mean, he was a brilliant filmmaker and a lovely human being, and funny as hell, of course. And he made this film about a con man and a little girl traveling down south in the 30s. And there's a moment where the little girl smoked, and my kids were like, "Hey, there's a 7 year, 11 years old girl smoking on screen," and they were like surprised slash enraged slash curious about that. And that was a good example of what you said about stuff that today it's completely forbidden on screen, but back then was okay. I have to tell them that those cigarettes weren't real. They weren't. I did my homework. I know, um, but it was part of this journey that you want your kids to embark on, which which is to understand life as a whole, and that includes attitudes and stuff that you wouldn't do today at all. So I have no problem watching rewatching old films, having content. Of course, I mean minstrel shows were awful back in the 30s too. It's not a, it was bad then. It was common, but it was awful anyway. Uh, does that mean that we shouldn't watch Al Jolson? Wow, I think that's are we going to cancel whatever we don't like or whatever we don't agree with? I don't think that's a risky thing because if we cancel content, we will never learn. No, I mean they love the film. They love it. The good thing is they also love the film. And they have a lot of fun, and they were, and of course, the movie it's inappropriate in a lot of ways because a that's the way the movie is, and b because it's a product of its own time. Yeah. Well, I mean, the risk of overprotecting our kids is that we do not. If we do that, we are not allowing them to suffer. I mean, suffering is part of growing up. Pain is part of growing up. Deception is part of growing up. Betrayal is part of growing up. I mean, you have to go through all that stuff in order to deal with real life. Regardless of if you like it or not, pain it's relevant in our lives. Suffering it's relevant in our lives, and movies are part of that. I mean, if movies, I mean, what do we want to sanitize movies? It's like I don't want that. It's like I don't want to. I don't think that re-editing all films is any good. Understanding them, on the other hand, will make us, better persons and better people. It will give us, tools to understand how culture works. And of course, I mean, movies are not perfect. There is not such thing as a perfect film. Not even the movies that we adore the most are perfect. You know, it's one of the closest things to perfection. But the Steel Bruce, the shark, is a piece of chunk. You just how great Spielberg is as a filmmaker makes you believe that you know thing it's alive. But on a wide shot, it looks really pretty. But it's perfect for because of some other stuff. I mean, one of my favorite films it's The Man Who Shot Liberty Bond, the 1962 film by John Ford, starring John Wayne, Vera Miles, and Jimmy Stewart. And there's a moment where Jimmy Stewart plays an old guy, and well, he doesn't look like an old guy. He has a wig, pride wig. It's like it's weird. But once you're there, you accept the story. You accept the rules of the game. And for me, it's like it's completely irrelevant if it's real or not. It's about the emotional connection. For starters, I don't like going to sets. As a producer, I do prefer develop, to edit, to work with directors. But going to set for me, it's like the most boring experience ever. And also, food is kind of awful, and you usually don't get Wi-Fi, and people yell at you because you're talking too loud. And yeah, no, and also that's the other thing. I mean, the set is the land of the director; it's not the land of the producer. I don't have a lot of things to do while I'm on Video Village looking at the monitor. Like, I'm not going to direct. I am not a director. That's not my thing. Um, but I took them to a lot of sets, and they like sets for the first 20 minutes, and then everything gets boring because you don't have a lot to do. But they know everything I do, and in fact, my son was like when he was like 7 years old, he asked me about the financials of a movie. How are you putting this film together? Like he was like 7 years old. And I was like, wow, I love this. I love that you are curious about how movies are really made. It's not people. Yeah, I mean, people tend to think that movie making is just shooting films, and shooting films it's like 33% of the whole process. No, or even less, of course. Yeah, you're right. Um, Developing a material, finding director or actors, then going for the money, then shooting the film, then editing the film, then finishing it, then taking the film to buyers or having, theatrical distribution or landing on a deal with a streamer. I mean, that takes a lot. And if you think about shooting, it's just a fraction of the whole process. I wouldn't, I mean, of course, if you need that in order to have a film, I will never underestimate shootings, but it's just a small fraction of the whole. Well, I don't think that I'm not sure that happens with my kids. No, I mean, not with my kids. I mean, they love watching films and they love the emotional uh, process while they're watching, and then we have conversations about who made this film and the way it was done, or but no, they enjoy as any other audience member. Yeah, I mean, and it is the same for me. It's kind of weird. I like split personality when I'm watching a film because in one hand I'm enjoying the whole thing as any other member of the audience, while my brain, my heart is analyzing some other stuff, like how many weeks of shooting, how much money did they spend, these, if they have any. Yeah, I mean, you just because you spent years working on this, you realize, well, you're watching it when something did not work, like when editing is trying to cover big mistake, or when there's something that should be there but it's not. Right. Well, yeah, I usually, and this is my nature, I'm always thinking about story mostly and breaking down structure when I'm watching a film. I am not overly concerned with I don't know, length or staging. I'm not very much into that. I'm much more into, okay, how does it work? Why they choose going narratively speaking, in this direction instead of any other direction? I mean, it's like I'm always much more concerned about the overall story than anything else. Oh, well, reading it's reading other people's scripts. It's a challenge. It's really easy to identify a great script, and it's really easy to know when you're reading a piece of crap. Pardon my French. Uh, Problem is when you're reading something that has some potential, but it's not there yet. That's the hard thing to spot. It's like bad script. I would say like 99% of scripts are really bad. Well, and there's also, there's some tricks of the trade that I found out when about script, and I come from writing, so you will find scripts that are really well written in terms of their entertaining scripts, but the structure it's not working. So it's kind of that's a trick of the trade. That's someone tricking you thinking that the script is good because the writing is good in terms of style, but style doesn't matter. I mean, the audience is not aware of the writing style when they're watching a film. They're aware of what this character wants to do or what is his emotional goal, or will he rescue the girl, or well, that's enough. But you know what I mean. It's like audiences are much more concerned about the story than anything else. I mean, there are a lot of great directors. Listen, a lot of great directors who are also writers. They are really bad at, yeah, they have a lot of typos. Yeah, I have seen that a lot, thousand times. So it's like, yeah, spelling. Yeah, that's not what I'm at the producer. It's not an issue. Oh no, it's like, yeah, complaining about spelling. It's like it's kind of a shallow. It's superficial. I mean, like because yeah, I mean, yes, sir, that's problem when you're talking about spelling. Yeah, I know. It's like it's so funny. Yeah, and let me ask you, it became a movie afterwards. It became a movie afterwards. Somebody adapted to the screen. There. I mean, but with novels, that happens a lot. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, when Orson Welles did Touch of Evil, he basically bought the rights off the shelf for a really bad novel, a novel called Batch of Evil, and he created a masterpiece out of that. And the novel, it's just a pulpy, you know, thing. Adapting great novels. I mean, I am not sure it works. You, yeah, mostly it can be, but it's not about because we're not talking about translating the writing style. We're talking about that's the only thing that matters. And maybe you can get some of the mood from the original piece, but it's not that you can movie making it not illustrating. Not it's a different arena. Absolutely. Different rules. Sometimes, Jessica, sometimes someone comes to you and says something like, well, this novel could be either a movie or a TV series. And it's like, no, completely different rules. Different, 100%. Well, I mean, in series, for starters, you need, I mean, yes, absolutely. No, but also you need, I mean, if you want to sustain the audience interest on a series, you need multiple points of view. If you have multiple points of view on a movie, unless it's a really, really long film, that's actually confusing. It's like, yeah, you don't need, I mean, you don't need cliffhangers on movies. The structure works in a different way. You're not thinking about the audience going to the bathroom like every 45 minutes in movies. It's a different thing. Unless you're making movies for an all audience. Yeah, like in all days. I mean, I don't remember what, I mean, my parents took me to see The Sound of Music when I was like 7 years old. And at that time was the longest film I ever saw. And I was so grateful that it had a intermission. Nowadays, you have movies. I mean, the average, no, it's not the average, but you have movies. A lot of movies are over 3 hours long. And, I'm 51 and bladder is becoming a thing. So, yeah, I'm much more thinking about 80, going back to the old 90 minutes format out of my personal experience.
Yeah. Like, you can't like, a
Oh, yeah.
seven-year-old isn't gonna sit for 3 hours.
Yeah, yeah. One thing when I was programming, yeah, and when I was programming, we always had issues with. I mean, the way we used to have a Saturday, like four or five movies in a row, starting at 2 p.m. and ending at, like, I don't know, 10 p.m. on the network. It was like a marathon. You have all those movies one after the other, and because of different lengths, we always needed 70 to 90-minute films. And I was like, hey, let's go after animation because most animated films without end credits are around 80 something,
Mhm.
82, 83 minutes. So, but that's because kids, they can't stand
Yeah.
sit for
Yeah,
long.
it's one of the things I'm starting to notice is there isn't really that many films going to the cinema for kids, like 7
Yeah.
that aren't animated, like, even high school kids. Like, there aren't that many, I mean, outside of the Marvel canon.
No, I would say superheroes became that. But when we were growing up, well, these were when I was growing up, you have a lot of live action films
Yeah,
for kids, a lot. Even movies
yeah,
like The Goonies were like that. Adventures in Babysitting. I'm thinking about movies from the 80s, but I can mention. I mean, Disney made a lot of live action features in the
mhm,
70s, with Kurt Russell playing a teenage school student. Um, there was a long tradition of live action for kids, and this seems to be gone.
yeah, and
I mean, you can find that on TV. There's a lot of serious for that audience, but not as many theatrical movies.
I think there is an audience for it. I just think, if for some reason, they fell away, and maybe those people who are creating those
Well,
stories went to
my
streaming.
fear is that, well, this town it's founded on fear, and problem with that is most studios are not willing to try something different. Funny thing, this summer season we realized. I mean, audiences went to movies that fall outside the box. Oppenheimer, Barbie, those films weren't
Mhm,
sequels or
mhm,
prequels or whatever. There weren't spin-offs or or anything like that. Those were brand new pieces that had some brand recognition because Barbie, you know what it is. And in the case of Oppenheimer, you're talking about Chris Nolan. So you were expecting some specific kind of entertainment. While a lot of superhero films, I wouldn't say they failed, but the projections were way higher.
yeah,
And instead of thinking about what made Barbie different, the first thing that one of the executives from Mattel said, it's like, well, now we are going to do, and he had a list of movies based on different toys. And it's like, well, what made Barbie different? It's that you have a point of view.
Yeah.
There's a concept. It's not about, the toy. It's about the idea,
Yeah. It was it, it
and that's one of the reasons why studios releasing. I mean, the most expensive thing is actually, P&A. It's the marketing and money. I mean, marketing a film, it's really expensive.
yeah.
Billboards, TV, website, whatever. Everything, it's really that thing is becoming expensive and expensive and expensive everything. So what studios are saying is that, okay, instead of making 40 movies a year, we are going to make 12. But
Yeah.
we have to lower the risk. And lowering the risk means that studios are not doing rom-coms anymore for theatrical consumption. They're not doing adult dramas anymore. They're almost not doing thrillers. Everything has to be huge. Problem is, the bigger the movie, the expensive the movie is. So you're not mitigating risk. You're actually going making each film riskier than it was before.
Yeah. And just the whole financing model around independent film completely shifted.
Well, but I would say that it's happening in the U.S. The pandemic did bring some fresh air for independent films made outside the U.S. Because most independent films made outside the U.S. They weren't put together thinking that the U.S. was going to pay for the whole thing. So those films are less dependent on the U.S. than American films, and that's one of the reasons I mostly make films outside the U.S. because you can get part of your financing from the U.S., but that's not the difference between life and death. You're pre-selling the film to a lot of places. I mean, at its work, as it worked 10 years ago. That system is coming back
I hope so.
somehow, especially in Europe. Yeah. So I would say I don't think, yeah, I'm not a clairvoyant or anything, but I do think there's going to be a resurgence of international independent filmmaking in a way that wasn't there in the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years.
I hope so.
I'm seeing it. It's
Yeah.
happening. It's happening.
That's
I'm
so
seeing
good
it.
to hear.
I mean, if you're willing to make a film for under, I mean, that's the thing. If you're willing to make a film for under
Yeah. Which
$12 million,
is but that's
that's the
the
thing.
like that's the sweet spot of where you discover an auteur. Like, first time director or second time director. Like gosh, I'm seeing some of these directors go from their independent films that are under $5 million to making a Marvel movie. Like, there's no in between to like get your
Well, yeah, but it's like when you're trying. I mean, I've been dealing with corporations and studios for a while, the last 15 years, if you wish, and you have to learn. You have to learn how it works. Uh, I mean, and you have to empathize with executives. They're working. They have bosses. They have long range plans. They have to do things that the studio's asking them to do, like planning ahead and a lot. And it's not easy. There's a lot of pressure. Executives they go under a lot of pressure. If you made a $5 million film, your next film should be a $12 million film, not a 50 or not even a $100 million film, okay? Because you have to learn
yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, a lot to learn.
a lot to
It's
learn the politics of it, the politics of it. I mean, I admire when you have people like Ridley Scott, who's 80 something, and he knows how to navigate those
Mhm.
waters. He have been making films for studios for the last 15 years. Wow. And he still owns, creatively speaking, those films.
Yeah.
Um, so that means that he knows how to. I mean, you have to know the value of each fight. You can't fight every
Yeah.
fight.
It's it's such a
You can get a ulcer if you don't do that. I mean, so,
yeah. Exactly. All right. We
yeah.
are coming up to our hour, and so I wanna I
Oh, I
I
love
know.
these. Let's keep doing
I
it. Okay,
know,
okay. You have to. I know, I know.
it's such a great conversation.
And thanks for. I mean, I know I have a thick accent. That's my thing. And thanks for to the audience to
But
see. not turning off after listening to my
I
music.
understand everything you're saying. So I have to ask you my last question, which is what
Yeah.
movie should I show my son so that he falls in love with cinema?
Well, I mean, I would Sing in the Rain. That's a movie. Sing in the Rain.
Yeah.
Such a great film. It's such a happy experience, but it's at the same time it's a brilliant film about life in this town in the late 20s, and that will help them to understand the
Yeah.
past as a living thing. When my daughter was 3 years old, she asked me if when my father was a kid, everything was in black and white. Uh, I had to tell her, no, 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 movies were black and white, but life was in color.
I
Uh,
love that.
but the good thing about Singing in the Rain is that it's in color. It's living color. The songs are great, and it's really funny, and it's
Yeah.
emotional, and it's poetic, and at the same time, it's grounded, and it's one of the greatest top 10 movies ever made anywhere, not only in this country. And it's a good example of uh, best filmmaking ever, and also it can show your kids that entertainment could be sophisticated and
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah.
Massive, massive pop entertainment could be great if
Yeah.
done well.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I love that film.
And I can sing all those songs, but you know what?
We have a tradition, the two of us, of dancing together, so I'll put on classic stuff for us to dance to, and
That's the perfect film then.
yeah.
And yeah, and songs are one of the reasons why the movie is so good is because songs are advancing the plot.
Yeah.
And it's a character-driven movie. It's about characters you care
Yeah.
for. Don, Cosmo. I mean, I don't know, all Katie. I don't remember all those names. Because I've seen the movie so many times, and it's such a unique experience, and it's that, and it's like life. That's life. That movie is
Yeah.
life.
If you enjoyed the conversation, please don't forget to like and subscribe. New episodes release every Wednesday. And leave a comment and let me know which movie you think I should show my son. Until next time, take care.